Hello, thank you for joining the first workshop of The Black Family, united by history, restored by storytelling, brought to you by New York Life. The Association for the Study of African American Life and History, in collaboration with Archival Alchemy, presents this national program that highlights the legacy of Black family reunions while encouraging families of all backgrounds to build and renew their own familial traditions and stories. We encourage you to watch the rest of the videos in this series to learn more about oral storytelling, genealogy, and familial archiving. Once you view all of the videos, you could receive a certificate as a family historian from the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And now, let's get to Workshop 1 on Writing Our Family Histories, led by Frazine K. Taylor. This virtual workshop was originally presented during ASALH's 105th Annual Meeting and Conference in 2020, and is now being made available for those who may not have been able to attend. Frazine K. Taylor is the author of Researching African American Genealogy in Alabama, a resource guide, and conducts genealogy and archival workshops throughout the state. To learn more about Frazine and her work, please read her full bio in the YouTube description. Now, we will turn it over to Tara White, co-chair of ASALH's Academic Program Committee, to introduce Frazine and get the workshop started.
I would like to welcome everyone to our workshop for today. The workshop is called Preserving the Past to Empower the Future, How to Write Our Family Histories, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing someone who is near and dear to me. And guys, if I hesitate a little bit, I'm letting more people into the room because this one's people are steadily coming in. So the leader for today's workshop is Ms. Frazine Taylor, and Ms. Taylor has a deep and long biography. You know, I can talk a lot about her experience as an Atlanta University trained librarian. I can talk about her experience as a librarian at Tuskegee. I can talk about her experience as an archivist and the head of Ready Reference at the Alabama Department of Archives and History. But my own experience with Ms. Taylor is in three ways, actually. Ms. Taylor is actually the current president of the Alabama Historical Association, which is the state's primary history organization, and Ms. Taylor has the distinction of being the first African American president of the association, and us folks in Alabama, we're very proud of her. Ms. Taylor knows a bunch of people because she's helped a bunch of us research our own roots, find our families, and in fact, I was recounting to her as we were waiting how she helped me so much by helping me to look for the records, and as a historian myself, and someone who has worked in the archives and has some archival experience, Ms. Taylor, the beauty of Ms. Taylor, she tells you where to go. You know, what helped me more than anything was learning where to go and what I need to be looking for. And that was a godsend for me. And so I'm going to introduce her to you. She is now retired and enjoying that retirement life, bless her heart. She is also, though, in addition to being the Alabama Historical Association president, she's also worked with Alabama State University, and that was the other capacity I knew her in. She was actually my co-worker for a year when I worked for Alabama State's Archives and National Center for the Study of Civil Rights and African American History. And Ms. Taylor made all of our lives a whole lot easier in the archives. So I would like to thank her for submitting this workshop proposal and welcome her. And I'm going to let her take over from here. So Ms. Taylor, it is yours. It is yours.
Thank you so much, Tara, and all those good words, I would just say. Thank you for that. I enjoyed working with you and now. And by the way, I'm still currently working at Alabama State part-time.
Yes.
You can put up my first slide now.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, not that one. Okay. And this is the how to tell the family story, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I'm gonna do a new share.
Okay.
Here. All right.
And I would like to thank all of you for being here this afternoon. You can see, you're gonna start with the slideshow and animation. Okay, very good. Very good. We're gonna discuss how to tell the family story. How do you tell your family story and present your genealogy to a gathering such as a family reunion? How do you get away from boring your family and friends with statistical data only? Well, what we do is we give our family ancestors a life and help others to see them as once living and working human beings. Next slide. Step 1, get organized. Just don't go out there and have a bunch of paper and don't know what you have. Get organized from the very beginning. It'll save you in the long run. Believe me, and I know this from experience. When I was doing my family research and looking at documents, I just made copies of wherever I saw my family's name. And when I ended up going back to those documents and didn't even know I had them in a bunch of papers. So organized, and that I stress strongly, organized from the beginning. Then you want to start by interviewing all of the older family members, record them, or take notes. In my book, Researching African American Genealogy in Alabama, a resource guide published in 2008, Chapter 2 is devoted strictly to oral history interviews. And in that book, I give you a number of suggestions and ways in which you can be able to interview the older members of your family. Because remember, once they leave us, their memories are gone. Next slide. You can use tools such as ancestry charts and family group sheets to record the information that you learn from the interviews or your personal research in order to organize your research in such a way that you are able to go step by step, starting with yourself and research backwards, one generation at a time. Now, as I mentioned before, yes, you can bore people with these ancestry charts and family group sheets, but what they help you do is that they will help you for where you find that you may have a lack of information. They'll help you to clarify relationships, and it's easy to complete. Next slide. Step 2, analyze the information you already have and decide how and where you will conduct your research in archives or library, other repositories, county courthouses, or online. You will use all of these tools plus some more that you will come across. The two largest online resources are Ancestry.com, which is a paid subscription site, and FamilySearch.org, which is a free site. Both will let you place your family trees on them. Next slide. Step 3, seek all documentation. The first place you want to go and when you want to research, besides after you do your oral history, after you interview your relatives or your cousins, sometimes it may be the cousins in the family that have the information you need, or the cousin once removed. So remember, you need to look at all of your family. What do we have at home? Some of the things we have at home are like insurance record documentation, letters. Now we know we don't do a lot of letter writing today, but they did back in the past. You can find those letters. You will find a lot of information. But we do have emails, so don't neglect your emails. Photographs, old photographs, funeral programs. Now, our funeral programs have a lot of information about family on those funeral programs. Some archives have those collections now. I know the Alabama State Archives have a funeral program collection. Birmingham Public has one. All right, you have to the thing is to locate where they are located. Postcards. How many of you see older postcards? And on the postcard, there sometimes a picture of a family member. Back in the early history, that's what the postcards used to have on it, is a picture of the family member, and they would send it to their family members. Yearbooks. A lot of us still have our yearbooks. That's where you can find information. And if you don't have them, and I'll talk about a little later on where the school records they would have them. Obituaries from the newspaper. Now, those are just a few of the records that you can find in your home. And each person's records are unique to them. You may have kept some other things that I may not have kept, but you need to search that and find that information. The second record group I would like to talk about is the county records. When I'm talking about county records, those are the records that you'll find at courthouses, at probate judge's office. Or you can find these also now in library, in archives, and on different sites too. You can still find those. But the thing is to know that you need to look for them. You would find things like land records. Then you would find such things as deed records, wills, marriages, divorce records, death records. Now, for example, when you're looking for records, one record will lead to other records. For example, you take the marriage record. Okay, you have your marriage record certificate. Okay, when you're looking at records, you let the record tell you where you need to look. What is this record telling me? For example, marriage records. Why was the marriage record created? Well, one reason is it was created from the application. Go backwards. Created from the application. So your marriage certificate had an application attached to it. Now, some of those applications are, you still have them. You still have access to the book, but some of them you do not. And that's your job, is to find out where they have it. But on that marriage application, you will have the names of the parents, the name, occupations of the people who are getting married. But a lot of the witnesses, on the certificate, you will also have the witnesses. And you want to know if somebody is signing your marriage certificate, they might be in a close family member. And it's all kinds of things that records themselves can tell you. I'm just using the marriage records as an example. For example, divorce records. Within a divorce record, that's a good record to find, because in that it names the children, the heirs, and who was married and what, and so forth. So you get my point is that let the record tell you where to search. You just don't focus in on the record itself, but say, why was this record created? For example, in the county record, you will find unique county records. For example, in 1920 and 1921, the state of Alabama required the residents to register their dogs. So my ancestor in Elmore County registered his dog in 1920 and 21. The color of the dog, the kind of dog, how much he paid for the license. And yes, I know the color of his dog and how old and what he was, but unfortunately, I do not have a picture of my great-great-grandfather. But I know what his dog looked like. But this is just one example of unique records. So look for the uniqueness in your county records in the time that you're researching. The next set of records is the is we're going to talk about here is the federal and state records. That's a voluminous set of records, but I'm just going to talk about two right now, and that is the state census and the federal census. Uh, the census is taken every 10 years, and of course now we're in the 2020, and I hope all of you have done that, have counted yourselves. So, and you'll see the reason a little later on. I'm going to talk about what's in those census. But the state of Alabama, the census also is released to the public every 72 years. So the 1950 census will be released in 2022. And guess what, y'all? I'll be on that census. I ain't gonna tell you how old I am, but I'll be there. Okay. Now, that not to say, when I say it's released to the public every 72 years, you can get information from the Census Bureau on your family beginning in 1960 to 2000 to the 2000 census. But there is a fee for that. But they are only going to search your family, not like you'll be able to look through all of the records. Okay, the states could produce census in between every 10 years. So for example, Alabama conducted an 1850, 1855, and an 1866 census. Now, although there was a federal 1850 census, there was also a state for Alabama 1850. The purpose, the unique thing about this is they missed people on both. So you need to look at both of them. Now, where Alabama did that, other states did the same thing. This is just, I'm just using Alabama examples. Now, also that 1866 census is that's 5 years after the Civil War. I mean, just not 5 years. It's after the Civil War, so that all African American families were listed. Only the head of household, but the people within the household had a they were numbered. Our next set of records is that you're going to look at is church records. Within the church records, you have baptism records, church rolls and church histories, financial records, church minutes. Now, in the early churches minutes would have a sort of a gossipy type minute. They would say, for example, who was turned out of church and for what reason, who put out of church, who left and went to another state or went to another county, and just all kind of gossipy stuff, information that we don't put in our minutes today. But and also so that the newspapers too would have a lot of gossipy stuff that you could maybe trace your family on. School records. Now this is at the school. School records are such things, as I said before, yearbooks, report cards, school censuses, and the school newspaper. In 1919, the Acts of Alabama Superintendent of Education was told to conduct a census, and it was to be taken in July of the even number of years of all children between the ages of 6 and 21. Some of these census records can be located at the county school board in their respective counties, and a few are at Alabama Department of Archives and History. What they entail, what they have on it, the details, is the name of the children, the parents or guardian, the date of birth and race for each. It was enumerated for each child, and also they also would name the school that they attended and how many miles that they were from the school. Now they're all different in each county and in each state, but they all took those school census. Now they even take them today, but at a certain time, the Privacy Act, you cannot get into those kinds of records. But you can. I think in Elmore County they started in 1913, and they have about 7 to 8 years. But your job is to find out where they're located. But you can start with your Board of Education, your Archives, the Historical Association, but somebody will have them. In fact, you can also look on familysearch.org at the wiki. The wiki is a search engine that will tell you what records are available in certain states. Membership records. Now, those are records that all of us have. For example, how many organizations do you belong to? Think about all the organizations you belong to. Well, your ancestors did the same thing. Social clubs and service organizations and so forth. And what are all these records have the same thing, information in common. They're asked about your name, your address, your date of birth, and sometimes occupation. In my book, I call my book again, Researching African American Genealogy in Alabama, a resource guide, and the bibliography that I have supplied for this workshop will provide further steps on how to research so that you will have enough material to publish a good story on your family that will empower your family's legacy. Now, next slide. Let's do a little sort of a working definition. Now, this is not a definition. You can look up the word family tree and define and do a definition, but this is my definition. I'm gonna be candid with that. But what it is, okay, as I said before, if you don't want to publish your family history, or you don't feel that you want to do that at this point or any other time, you can create a family tree, and you place that family tree in. You can place that family tree in a library, in an archive. And what you want to do, the reason you want to do that is because, like my generation, we won't have such a hard time trying to locate our family. The next generation, they may not be interested right now. And believe me, I wasn't interested when I was a teenager in doing my family history. So it's nothing new. But later on, now that when I became interested, unfortunately, I had to do research. I didn't have any starting point. And that's what we want to leave our children and our grandchildren, the starting point. Because like I said, they may not be interested right now, but if you put it in such a way, they may become interested and make it colorful. Now you see this forestry here. I want to look at the forestry as your family tree. Within the forest, we have all different types of trees, right? Okay, within a family, we'll compare that to the family. In the family, you have a grandparent and children. You may have a single parent, mother and children, a father and children. You may have an extended or a blended family and children. But what happens here is that all make up the family. So what you want to make sure when you're doing your research is that you are following the biological lines. And the reason you want to do that, I can think of two reasons right now. The first one that I can think of that would be most important to all of us is that we want to research our family and find out who they are, because we do not want our children to end up marrying close cousins. Okay, and you know what can happen to them when that happens. Okay, and the second one, these are two. There's many more reasons why you want to do this. Is medical problems within the family. Okay, now medical problems can be if the medical people knew about this beforehand, they can prescribe the treatments that may help within the family. You can find medical information on the death certificate. Within that death certificate, it will tell you what the reason the person passed away, and that you can begin to start compiling a reason within your family. If you have a medical problems in your family, if that problem stemmed way back in your ancestors' time. Now, I would like to speak about 4 examples that I have seen that authors publishing their family stories and for what kind of research they did using the resources that I've talked about and more. And let me just stop right here and say one other thing. If you're a historian and you not interested in doing family history or doing genealogy, sometimes you would run across within your research a name and that you know nothing about. And you know, though it is no formal information written about that person, you can use family history or family genealogy to build a family story on that person. And I've had people to ask me about, so they use the same resources to make their stories authenticated or correct, I would say. And that may not be the word right now, but I'll come across it a little later on. Now, what I was trying, that as I said before, I'm going to give you 4 examples of what way people have used their family history to write stories, to write their story. The first one is a book entitled I Remember by Jerome Carroll Holmes. I Remember reveals the experiences of Jerome Carroll Holmes' life on the campus of the Alabama Industrial School in Mount Meigs, Alabama. This book depicts the memories of the past, beginning with the 60s through the 90s. It reveals the pitfalls, hardship, and successes in rehabilitation. Forget that word. It reveals the pitfalls, the hardships, and successes of the youth to help them to become better citizens in the community. And sometimes that happens where I'm looking at a word, I know the word, but I can't pronounce it. So I'm human. Okay. In this appendix is where she places many of her photographs of the past that chronicles the many accomplishments of the school. There were several famous people that attended school, such as Neil Carter, who played in Hanging with Mr. Cooper in 1992, and baseball pitcher Satchel Paige, also known as Leroy Page. He began his career in 1926. Now, my second example, and maybe I need a little water, that's why I can't pronounce these words. My second example is a book entitled Class's Husband, written by Anthony Frazine, who writes about his grandfather, David Frazine Sr., which includes his wife, Classy, and their extended family. The locale is the Florida Panhandle, around Panama City. It concentrates on the 20th century and is the story of a large family and its members, their lives, their deaths, and their constant struggle to survive in the piney woods of northern Florida. He tells this story in the dialect of the time and recorded stories told by his grandfather. He too places photographs of the family in his book as he tells the story of his grandfather. The third example is Fallen Prince. It's a scholarly book about the founder, William James Edwards, of a school in Alabama called Snow Hill Institute. The author is the founder's grandson. He was able to obtain a lot of information about the Institute from the Library of Congress, Tuskegee Archives, and various places that the institution would have an impact. A point of interest here is that W.J. Edwards was a graduate of Tuskegee Institute, the class of 1893. Snow Hill, a private institute, was basically modeled after Tuskegee. He too adds photographs in his book of the students, the buildings and grounds, and the faculty. Now, my fourth and my last example. Now, these are not all of the books that you can go to many of the libraries and archives and any place and go in the family history section or go in and look at other kinds of examples of books that people have written about their family. My folks example is a book called The Black Family Dinner Cookbook. What can I say? Get a family's cookbook started or a calendar and tell your story around the food served at your family reunions and recipes passed down through the family members from generation to generation. Researching and publishing your family's story is a powerful statement about their lives and yours. Now, how are we running on time? Okay. Now, one of the things that I mentioned, I said come back to this, is our census, U.S. Census. Once you have done your oral history and done your family search around your home and various places, the set of records that we usually send people to as researchers is the U.S. Census. Remember, it was taken every 10 years since 1790. So up until now. So you have your family is going to be on that census somewhere. And your family's friends, all that, it's a big body of information. And also that census will take you to other records, and we'll talk about those other records in a few minutes. This is what not only do we have a problem, the one census that we probably very, very much familiar with is the population census. But there were other census taken during these times. These schedules, other schedules. One of the things for us as African American people is the 1890. That census was destroyed in 1921 by a fire. In fact, it was destroyed January the 10th, 1921. I just keep that in my mind because remember that it was a very good, very informative census for African Americans. But there are records that some were kept. I mean, some were found. Some of them were found, but not many. But there are other records that you can you can use to go in between those, like the city directories and so forth. But let's talk about other census that was taken during the same time as the population census. There's a census, there's the agriculture census. The agriculture census, the years that it was taken was 1850, 1860, 1870, and 1880. And who's in it? Farmers with productions above a minimum threshold. Now, also not only farmers, but also people who rent, tenants. Also, those were related. If they own or if they rented, they were recorded in the agriculture census. American Indian, those were taken in 1880, and 1900 and 1910. The Indian schedule, and they are called inquiries relating to Indians. That's who will be in it. And these are special census. Okay, this is my favorite one. I call it the DDD classes, and that is called the defective, dependent, and delinquent class. And it was only taken in 1880. Who's in it? The sick or the disabled, or people who were in asylums. Now, I have seen where in Alabama, I saw one where they listed the person, 5 people that were in this insane asylum. And it was a note on this saying, these people are not insane. I don't know why they are here. Well, that's what the note said. Now, one of the things that I tell people to look in these censuses is that sometimes they may be here located in the census, but they're not in the population census. So could be missed because they were in these institutions. There was a manufacturing census taken, and it was taken in 1820, 1850, 1860, 1870, and 1880. And who's they in it? Business owners with productions above a minimum threshold. Now, in your business only, that leads you to business records. The ancestors may have been in some of these places, but if you don't know that they are business listed, you don't know that. And of course, we know the slave census, 1850 and 1860, and it lists the slave owner along with the ages and sex, but not the names of each slave. In that on that census too were two things. There are two columns. One say fugitives from the state. That can indicate that there was a runaway. They got a little check there. And they also told the number of dwellings that the slave owner had. And that's the slave research and slave information, a whole nother workshop. Veterans and military records or census, I should say. That was done in 1840. One was done in 1840, which is the Revolutionary pensioners. 1890, the Union veterans. That one was not destroyed. 1900, 1910, and 1920, military on bases and vessels. And 1930, merchant seamen on vessels. The what details in the census? What can you find in the census that will help you towards your family, researching your family? You can find places of residence, like state, county, township, towns, and census wards, residential institutions, and so forth. The name, head of the household, and right for 1790 and 1840, it's just head of the household only, and all free household members. Now, 1854, you're going to be listing everybody in the household. Now, what I tell you about looking at these is because when you start with 1870, that's the one that will have African Americans in it. But do remember that 1866 in Alabama and some other states will also have African Americans listed. But the head of household and the families will be there listed: the mother, the wife, the children. And the census the census takers took the census house by house by house. So you may find other members within other households within that in that area. So if you don't find your person in the index of those census, because that's what you'll be searching first, is indexes. The indexer may have missed those people. So you go to the original record, the primary source, and look at those, look up and down that, because you also want to look at your family. You can also find in these census birthplaces. They'll say they may be living in Alabama at this time, but you will find the fact that it asks what place where the person was born. They may be born in North Carolina. So that helps you to go back to additional records. Marriages. The marriage for 1850 through 1880, they asked whether the person was married in the past year, and that was I was able to find a relative who was married in 1870 in the year in 1870, but in the month. And I was able to find the marriage record because I could look for the marriage record in 1870. Child mortality. They will ask in the 1900 on the census and the 1910 census, they ask the number of children born to a woman. And the question here is it still living? So you may have a lady and a husband that's older, and she would tell how many children she had. And if they were still living, there would be a column there. But if no one else is living, if it's only two people living in the household and she had 15 children, you need to look in some other place to find her children, because they are all grown and they are with their own families. Okay, immigration and citizenship. You can find that information. Occupation. Occupation would lead you to the records of the place where the people were employed. Military service, 1840, 1890, and in 1930 asked whether or not the person was a veteran and in which war. If you find out that your person was a veteran and in a war, then you can look for their military records, especially on the 1930 census. Health and education, whether they attended school, the highest grade completed, uh, property, whether they own land. If they own land, then you need to go look for land deeds and records. Whether they had home, whether it was mortgage, if it was mortgage, you need to look for the mortgage records. And that is why those are why we would be able to. That's why you use the census record, because that's why you begin to create a record of your family. Now, how are we coming on time? Okay, okay. And the last thing before I finish and open up for question is, where do you find a lot of these the censuses online? One place I already mentioned was Ancestry.com, Family Search, Find My Past, Heritage Quest online, and My Heritage. My Heritage is one of Ancestry.com and My Heritage place you would have to pay, the paid site, but the others are free. But there are many, many others. You can do a Google search and find some searches, some some census information online. Now, as I said, with this beginning of this workshop and our title on preserving the past to empower the future, how to write your family history. But as you can see, as you put things together about your family or compile information about your family, you can see how it will empower even you, as well as other family members, to know the types and the kinds and the why and where their ancestors lived and what kind of work they did or what kind of impact they had on the community. And they really did, and we just don't know about them. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Taylor, for that wonderful presentation. I want to go immediately to a couple of questions, because we do have some questions that as you were going along, and the particular question has to do, and I know you said this was a whole nother workshop, with slavery, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of get stuck and they don't know how to go over that wall. This particular person, she's having issues with slave research, and she's looking for relatives in Mississippi. And she was saying that she has the comprehensive name index for the American slave, and she's still hitting a brick wall. And I wanted to pose that, a question initially to you, just in case she's still here, because she was going to duck out. So if you had anything to add, do you have anything to add to that or help her?
Okay, one of the things I would like to add in doing, sometimes we jump to slave research before we have done enough research to actually know that that is the person. And then once she has, you got to really know what area that your family lived in, a certain location, geographical location, and the slave owners within that location. The name may be different. It may not be, if you know it, it's good, but the name may be totally different. So you have to research all of the slave owners within that area that your family lived in by using their records, their probate records. And a lot of times, the person that you know about that you think had the slave, they may have lived way into the 1870s. but though they inherit those slaves from their ancestors, so you have to go backwards and see where they actually got the first slave. And then you may find them on an inventory of that person's property. Well, the inventories are at the probate office, and the probate office, not the office, but the probate records. You can find some of those probate records online at ancestry.com or Ancestry or Family Search too. But the thing is to find out what slave owners were in that area. If that last name is not the one that you can find, it may have been another last name that owned those slaves.
Can I give a brief example?
Yes, please.
We were looking for my grandmother's grandfather, and we were looking using the last name that we knew, which was Kernigan or Cunningham, because you know, he's from Alabama, from the country. And so it was Cunningham, but we had heard Kernigan all our lives, so that was number one. Number two, then once we found Cunningham and kept realizing that wasn't working, we went another route. We used my grandmother had an older brother, and we used that older brother's Social Security application, right? Application for Social Security.
Yeah, that's an example. Okay.
And he was like grown when they were born. She had him young, and then she got married a couple times, and then she had my grandma and her sisters. Well, anyways, on his application, we came across a whole new last name because my great grandfather, once he left that plantation, he changed his name. He changed his name. And so that's something when Ms. Taylor said you need to make sure you've done enough research to know what you're looking at, right? That is what she means, because had I continued along those lines, I would have been stuck and not really found what I needed. But she, because I branched out in some other directions and came back, once I found that the last name was Steele, right? And then I went back to the county where they were. Now watch this. This is the other thing. The county was a new county that was Bullitt County. So you know, Bullitt County was created after the Civil War. So I had to go to the previous county, figure out where they were in Pike County, go to the previous county and figure that out, and then try to find them in the records. And so, you know, knowing where these people were, you know, and how your state changes, how those.
That's what I wanted to emphasize too. I want to emphasize that the fact that before you do anything in a county, when you research an county, read the county history. Read the county history, because like I was at my county, Elmore County, and I did the same thing. I was a novelist when I came to the state of Alabama. I didn't come in there knowing things, but I was researching and looking for information on my family. But Alabama, Elmore County didn't become a county until 1866. It was a part of Coosa, Montgomery, and 2 other counties. And I found that out, I was able to locate my people in Coosa County before 1866. So not only the county, but also the state boundaries. All those the land. Now remember something: when you're looking, land does not move. Okay, the boundaries may move. They may be in one county 10 years, the next 10 years in another county, but the land is description of land is still there. So that's good. You had another question?
Yes, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
I have a question. I'm Dorothy Foster from Louisville, Kentucky, and I was tracing my grandfather, and I noticed the name change in the 1850s. It showed he had a white father with, you know, the slave girl was 15 years old. And somewhere down the line, or 20 years later, I looked at the census and the name was changed from Shelby, which is the white man's name, and it was changed to my grandmother's name, Shelburne, and my grandfather had to take the name Shelburne because the Shelby, the family Shelby, said they didn't want him to carry the name because he was getting married, or they didn't want this blacklisted in, you know, in the family, because he was actually his father lived with them, came to visit them. He had the 40 acres and a mule. I mean, he was well taken care of by his white father. So, but the name change was something that was done when the family decided that they did not want to carry this black family anymore.
Okay. And that is not, that is typical and on both sides. The African American decide that they don't want the white name, so they'll change. So that's what you have to look for. And there's a book, and I'm sorry I don't have the citation, but there's a book I know I used to use in the archives, the book that lists the different variations of the names from the 1790 to the 1920 census.
Yes.
So you can, it is a reference out there that you can use those and look at names, last name changes. Now the first name of a person, even on that inventory, slave inventory, it will stay with that person until they die.
Yes.
Okay, and so so that's how you can put the groupings of. You can see families on an inventory that list the slave owner lists the last name. I mean, list the first name, and you can go to the 1870 and on, and you'll see that family grouping. They may have several different last names, but the grouping stays the same. Now, I also tell people the age and the name is suspect on the census. So it's from 5 to 10 years wrong, and, you know, but you have to have additional papers to prove what you need.
Okay.
Thank you.
But that is your story. That's a good story too to write up.
It is.
So that
it really is. Anybody else? I know you guys are full of questions.
Well, how many of you gonna write your stories? Can I hear you see your hands? And you're gonna use some of this stuff that I talked about to do so. Okay, very good. And I'm that's just a tip. What I talked about is just a tip of research out there. It's a whole body of research. Oh, thank you, Reverend Ryan.
Well, the common law. I had one more. I'm not gonna dominate, but I had one more about the common law family. You know, the common law name and how this name was in families. And when I noticed that one family member couldn't get Social Security because she hadn't married the person, but they had lived together for over 40 years, but she couldn't get the money from Social Security. Somewhere in the 40s, something changed. And so that's another whole area.
That's the whole new
common law names, common law children that carried the name. At one time, they could carry the father's name, but somewhere along the line that they couldn't.
Okay, and that is another area of research.
Yes.
Not another area, another documentation. You need to know the laws.
Right.
The laws within the county and the place, because when people broke those laws, they had to pay fines. And that's what you can, whatever happened to whenever somebody broke a law, fines will have to be paid, and there's another place for names. But there are, in some states, there are cohabitation records. Okay, and I don't know, whatever state you're in, you need to check and see if there were cohabitation records.
Yeah, but Kentucky, I think they lost their Social Security. If you weren't married, those ladies that were later on trying to collect Social Security from their husband they married during the war, They couldn't. They didn't marry during the war, but they lived there, over a long period of time. And next thing you know, they could not collect Social Security.
Yeah, okay. No, what I was getting at, what I was taking, I understand that, but what I was saying is when you brought that up, I was thinking about another set of records where you may have not a marriage, but I don't know, like you said, the law changed.
Yeah.
You may not have married, but you may have a cohabitation record. That person, you can prove that person was married to that
Right.
person. But no, I don't know when the law changed, so that's what you have to check out, law. And then in genealogy,
I got a lot of work to do.
right? And then in genealogy, another set of stuff you got to deal with is handwriting.
Yes.
That you need to, you know what I tell people with doing family history, you got to know everything. You got to know geography. You got to know law. You got to know just about all of the disciplines.
It's keeping me alive. It's keeping me alive.
Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I see it is. You're very lively.
That's a good thing. But I did want to want you to, she made a comment that I did want her to stress to you that it's an ongoing.
Oh yes.
It really is, and it's something that you're gonna continue to go, and it builds. And what you have to do is you really have to document and keep those records.
That's important.
The key. And
use a research log too. Always use and the reason you want to use a research log is that you won't keep going back to the same documents over and over again. You use a research log to find out what you found or what you did not find and what you copied. And as Ms. White was saying, yes, it is a lifelong occupation. And I say occupation. And the reason for that is, within the family is a moving entity. People die, people get born, people get married, people come in and out of the family. So you want to document that for our next generation.
I want to. Someone asked me a question. White is actually my maiden name, but we'll talk about that. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew we're going to continue to have a family history series. So Miss Taylor, we're probably gonna get you back for a couple more because Miss Taylor she's very modest, but Skip Gates has called her a couple of times, and other people call her all the time for the "Who Do You Think You Are" and the all those other genealogy shows. She's one of the persons that they're constantly consulting with. So she's definitely someone we want to have back. I have to mention this before we leave because we're about to transition to the key session. We have ASALH has funding from New York Life. And so we will be running a family history series. And so we're going to send you, put out more information to our members and over the year so that you'll know, what's coming along. And from time to time, just be looking on ASALH TV or wherever, and we'll be presenting more stuff. And like I said, we're going to beg, borrow, and beg Miss Taylor some more, because I'm serious when I tell you she's a wealth of information and a godsend.
Thank you for joining us for the first workshop of The Black Family. United by history, restored by storytelling. Special shout out to New York Life and our production team for bringing this project to life. Once again, we encourage you to watch the rest of the videos in this series to learn more about oral storytelling, genealogy, and familial archiving. Once you view all of the videos, you could receive a certificate as a family historian from ASALH. Be sure to subscribe to ASALH TV, ASALH's YouTube channel, and check out the YouTube description as well as the website for more information on this project.